Clutch hitting is a fickle friend, and it abandoned the Reds this weekend against the Mets. It's not something that I'm worried about, though. I'll tell you why on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds with myself, Jeff Carr. I am a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan that has turned an addiction to this team into information for you. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to me talk some Reds with you. I encourage you, if this is your first time, hit me up in the comment section if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening, hit me up on Twitter at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. And let's talk Reds baseball. This is what I do. Because Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every single day, and I'm talking about the Reds every single day here on Locked On Reds Podcast. There's so much that we've got to get to on today's show. Tejay Antone threw one pitch and then was pulled from the game on Sunday, which means a few rehabbing pitchers can't get ready fast enough. Speaking of pitching, the pitching has been stellar to begin the season, and it's the biggest reason why this team is looking pretty good to start. But we will start with this. Clutch hitting doomed the Reds to a series loss, but there are 3 reasons why I'm not worried in the slightest. Before we get to all of those, I want to tell you about Prize Picks, because this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. All right, clutch hitting abandoned the Reds this weekend, but like I said, 3 reasons. There's 3 thoughts that I have about this, and I want to say this because we'll start with this. There's a lot of folks, and there's folks that have DM'd me on Twitter, and there's folks that have hit up the comment section talking about the fielding. The fielding is a concern, but I believe you can out-hit bad fielding. I believe the Reds have done that many, many times across my lifetime as a fan. So if they just get the hitting going, then they're okay. You can't out-hit bad pitching, but you can out-hit bad fielding. I firmly believe that. But with this, you can look at the 2 losses that the Reds had. By the way, the Reds go 1-2 against the Mets over the weekend. They fall to 5-4 on the season. However, still above 500. You got to love seeing that. But in the 2 losses that the Reds had, the Reds allowed 3 runs in each game. So the pitching was fine. They were 0 for 16 with runners in scoring position. There it is. That's it. That's the tweet. 0 for 16 with runners in scoring position. That's what lost them the game. And it sucked. If you watched it, I mean, there were multiple instances, especially on Sunday. I mean, Encarnacion-Strand came up with the bases loaded, popped out very innocuously to shallow left field. He has had a rough start to the season, but he's also had a rough start to his BABIP. We talk about batting average on balls in play a lot on the show. It is a way to show how lucky or unlucky a hitter is getting. Encarnacion-Strand getting very, very unlucky right now. Speaking of which, so is Jeimer Candelario. Those guys are going to right the ship. It's going to be fine. But in this case, innocuous pop-up, didn't do anything. With 2 outs, bases loaded, that's the inning. Then, later on in the game, you had the bases loaded. Bubba Thompson up, 1 out, hits into a double play. Look, Bubba Thompson, they gave Will Benson a day off. This is part of one of the reasons why I'm not worried about the clutch hitting, as it were, is that right now this roster is held together with bubblegum and scotch tape at the moment. This was not the plan. To have this many guys out, like Matt McLain, Noelvi Marte, TJ Friedel, a third of your lineup gone. You can say what you will and say, man, Nick Krall needs to go make a move right now. And I am saying that as well. I would love to see that happen. But let's also not forget, he went and he made a move for Santiago Espinal. Hasn't exactly set the world on fire with that move, but it was a good depth move. That's really all you're going to get right now in the season, Because as of right now, everybody believes they're in it. Even the Marlins. Did the Marlins win yet? I don't know. Like they entered Sunday 0-9, and I should have looked up to see if they won before I made that joke. But when it comes to right now in this season, you're not going to make an impactful trade. Plus, you're going to get TJ Friedl back here in a couple of months. That's going to help out. So up until this point, the Reds just kind of need to tread water with their lineup. Does their lineup stink against lefties? Yeah. It's like half the lineup is sort of unhittable right now, or not hitting right now against left-handed pitching. But it's because guys like Espinal, Bubba Thompson are getting major at-bats that they should not have been needed to. It's just how injuries go. But yeah, that's one of the reasons. The other reason, see, this team has seen plenty of clutch hitting over the last year or so. Like, since everybody was called up, think of all the different times that there's been a clutch, like a walk-off hit or a late-game hit that changed things and all this other stuff. And, you can name multiple occasions where that has happened for the Reds. It's a probability thing. The biggest problem with clutch hitting, we always talk about, oh, this guy's clutch. This guy, man, in clutch situations, that's the guy you want at the plate. In general, clutch hitting is not something you can actually plan for. Usually, good hitters are clutch hitters. And usually bad hitters are not clutch hitters. There were a couple of occasions, and people want to single out Elly De La Cruz for plenty of reasons, but there were plenty of situations where guys were striking out with runners in scoring position, Elly being one of them. And the question was posed to David Bell after the game, what do you got to do about this? Is this something you guys are working on? You got to cut down on the strikeouts? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a balance. You have to be aggressive as a hitter. Especially with our speed, we don't want to strike out for sure. Sometimes they're going to happen. A lot of times it has to do with the pitching more than anything. But as a hitter, you want to stay aggressive. You have to not be afraid to strike out. But of course, when it comes down to it, you want to put the ball and play hard and have a chance to get on base, because we see what happens when we're able to do that. Good things happen.
And if you want to bag on Elly for looking at strike three and stuff like that, you go right ahead. I tend to believe that right now he is overcorrecting so that he can kind of reel it back in, figure out exactly what he needs to do, and he can focus in on that thing. I think that he's doing fine. This is a process. Baseball is a process. And because the first 9 games of the season, the Reds are 5-4, and the rest of the division is above 500, folks are getting up in arms about it. Let me help you out, though. Let me, lay back on the couch real quick. Let me give you a little bit of baseball psychology lesson here. Don't scoreboard watch in April. Don't do it. You're going to drive yourself nuts. This is a long season. And the way that the Reds are playing right now, there's plenty of reasons to be excited about this team. And I feel like it's easy to find a couple of areas that are lackluster and focus in on that and figure out that this is the reason why the Reds aren't going to make the playoffs, or this is the reason why the Reds won't be good. Clutch hitting is not one of those things. They're going to be fine with this because clutch hitting in general, you just got to be talented. And the Reds got so much talent, man. CES is clutch. Because in baseball, if you're clutch, you get a hit 3 out of 10 times. You know what that means? You make 7 outs in clutch hitting times. In fact, the Reds, I even looked this up. I was like, man, are they just awful with runners in scoring position? They're hitting .256 as a team right now. They're right in the middle of the pack. That's fine. 9 games in, I'm not worried if they're, high up, low up, whatever. Like, rankings this short into the season, don't do it. Don't scoreboard watch, don't stat watch. It's too early. Guys are figuring things out. Clutch hitting is not something that I'm worried about with the Reds, and I don't think it's going to abandon them all year. They're going to be fine. One of the biggest reasons that the Reds will be fine is because of their pitching. Just how good has it been to start the year? We'll dive into that coming up next. One of the things I love about Prize Picks is the ease with which you can use the app or the website or, however you use Prize Picks to get in on the daily fantasy action. Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy app for a reason, because you can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And sometimes I like to look at stats from other players. I like to look at what's going on around the league and maybe some players that are looking good right now, but the market hasn't quite caught up to. Two guys I'm looking at, Jazz Chisholm and Javier Assad. Now, the Marlins center fielder, Jazz Chisholm, his total baseline is at 0.5. So literally, if he gets one total base and you click more, you'll win. So, yeah, I'm clicking more on that. And then the Cubs pitcher Assad, his first outing, he had 5 strikeouts. And the line on his strikeouts for Prize Picks is 3.5 tonight. I'm clicking more on that as well. So click more on Jazz Chisholm total bases, click more on Javier Assad's strikeouts, and go to Prize Picks and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to get a first deposit match of up to $100. You're going to make some money off of some daily fantasy sports. Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go there, use the code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get a deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on your YouTube or on your free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team, every day. Speaking of every day, shout out to our everydayers out there. You guys and gals are what makes the show go. Coming up on our next Locked On Reds for all you everydayers, Steve will return. And we'll be discussing how the pitching staff moves with all these guys coming back from injury. We've kind of touched on it a little bit in previous weeks. Nick Lodolo's coming back. Sam Moll's coming back. Ian Gibaut's coming back. You got a lot of different guys. How does it all move? What happens? We'll kind of discuss it in depth tomorrow. But the pitching for right now, what we've seen from it so far has been pretty solid. They're doing exactly what we said they needed to do. In one of our episodes during spring training, when I looked at the expectations, the reasonable predictions for what the pitching staff should do this year, I said just be league average. Just be league average. You don't have to be the best. The Reds don't have to have the best starting 5. They don't have to have the best bullpen. But just be league average, because the starting rotation last year was horrendous by the numbers. Now, there were nice individual performances, but there was still plenty of reasons to look at the starting pitching staff and say, they need to get this right next year. And most of that just stemmed from getting guys back healthy. Most of that just stemmed back, if Hunter Green can pitch an entire year, if Nick Lodolo can pitch an entire year, Graham Ashcraft, all these guys, then a lot of it's going to fix itself. And we're starting to see that already, right out of the gate. I mean, they are right around the middle of the league in ERA, the pitching staff as a whole. They're top 10 in strikeout percentage, and they're 13th in walk percentage. That might surprise some people. I know that it's a very easy thing to harp on this bullpen whenever somebody comes out and the first thing that they do is walk a guy. But that happens a lot less than you think. And it happens a lot less than the rest of the league. Again, like I said, 13th in Major League Baseball. Now, one thing that they do need to work on is the ground ball rate. Everydayers probably tired of me talking about this. I said this a lot during the offseason. It's not gotten better. In fact, right now, they're dead last. 35% ground ball rate this year. And one of the key culprits of why it's bad is a guy that I thought would fix it. Nick Martinez was a dude this offseason that I really, really wanted the Reds to go get. Right now, his ground ball rate is at 26%. We're talking about a dude whose ground ball rate was around 50% all year last year. It's at 26% right now. I think part of it is the starting pitching nod. He's trying to keep his job as a starting pitcher. His splits last season as a starter versus a relief pitcher, he was much more effective as a relief pitcher. I think that will be a thing we'll discuss with Steve tomorrow about that. Whenever Nick Lodolo comes back, Nick Martinez needs to move to the bullpen. But right now, the ground ball rate kind of coming down from him. In fact, there's only 4 pitchers on this team that have ground ball rates of better than 40%. And one of them, I don't know how much longer we're going to be seeing him. We got Alexis Diaz at 60%. Hasn't pitched a ton, so that's, all of these are relief pitchers, so the sample size is tiny. Alexis Diaz, Buck Farmer, Fernando Cruz, and Tejay Antone. Your only pitchers at 40% or higher. All the starting pitchers, obviously, below 40%. And Nick Martinez at 26%. You also had Andrew Abbott at 27% ground ball rate. Anyway, I'm stuck in the stat. The ground ball rate needs to get better. But everything else is pretty good. I mean, they're really good at just keeping the Reds in the ball game. Think about this. Last March and April, the one day in March and then the month of April, the beginning of the season in 2023, opposing teams scored 4 or more runs 18 times against the Reds last year in just the first month and a day of the season. As of right now, opponents have only done that 4 times in 9 games. Hopefully that kind of comes down a little bit, but still showing you that the Reds are not blowing up like they did last year. And part of that is they don't have the Connor Overtons and Luis Cesses of the world that are starting in these games. They have much better talent on the mound. But I like what I see with that. Plus, this early going, when you look at the starting pitching staff, they're averaging just slightly over 5 innings per start. They were like 4 2/3 innings per start the first month and a day last year. So they are improving on where they are. And the important thing to remember is that this team was just not good in the month of April last year. And they're already, they got a nice start. Hopefully it doesn't fall apart here in the next couple of weeks. 4 games against Milwaukee starting today. Really need to make a good showing against them because they've come out of the gate hot. And as much as me and Steve are talking about, the Brewers are getting ready to rebuild and blow it all up. Well, if the Reds are going to let them play like this, right, they're not letting them play like this right now, but if the next 4 games, they just continue to let Christian Yelich eat, they continue to let Rhys Hoskins eat, they continue to let that pitching staff dominate, then the Brewers might get a wild hair about them, think that they're contenders. And I don't want to see that happen. I want to see the Reds kind of start to nudge that feeling, nudge that voice in the back of the Brewers' minds, like, we should probably trade off some guys and blow it up. I think that's going to begin sooner rather than later. I mean, April doesn't tell you much about a season. Just ask the Pittsburgh Pirates from 2023. But what we have seen so far from the Reds pitching staff is very encouraging. And even just the ability that they have to pitch out of jams. I mean, Andrew Abbott yesterday on Sunday's game did not have a very tidy outing, as it were. He looked pretty solid in the 5th inning and the 4th inning and things like that, but the 2nd and the 3rd inning, he faced bases loaded both times. He did give up the 1 run in the 2nd. He got out of it in the 3rd without giving up anything, but for the most part, I mean, base runners were all over the place on him. He was not having a very easy day. It looked like his slider, which is normally a really good pitch for him, he just wasn't commanding very well, didn't seem to be able to put it where he wanted it. There were a couple of occasions where he was either about to hit somebody or he did hit somebody with it. But you could just tell it was something he didn't have the grip on it quite well. So hopefully that's something that gets better for his next start. But even in a situation like that, where he's faced with base runners out the wazoo, he's able to pitch around it. I think that is a key trait, a key attribute, a key, tool maybe just to be able to scramble a little bit, right? Like cross-sport reference here for just a moment because I love golf. Not all golfers hit the ball down the middle of the fairway with every single hit. Sometimes you're in the bunker. Sometimes you're in the deep rough. Sometimes you've got to figure out how to get up and down in two. And that's what pitchers have to do. Not every pitcher is on every single day. So when you're not on, how do you get outs? Because you can't just go up to Derek Johnson and David Bell and just, well, I'm not on. So, get somebody in the pen. Bring him in. I got nothing. You got to figure out how to get outs even when you got nothing. I think Andrew Abbott did a pretty good job of that on Sunday. Giving up the 3 runs in 5 innings, but still, 3 runs was it. And then the bullpen comes in. Brent Suter, really. It's Brent Suter and Buck Farmer. Brent Suter pitches 3 shutout innings, only allowed 2 hits, but 3 shutout innings that even though the Reds lost, those 3 innings may have been some of the most important innings for the rest or for this next week because it allows the rest of the bullpen to reset. They only used Brent Suter and Buck Farmer in that loss. As much as it stunk that the Reds lost the game, it wasn't as if they threw everything they had at it and ended up losing. I think that if you're looking for silver linings here, there's plenty of silver linings. And as much as somebody might be wanting to flip out about the first series loss of the season, that's not me. I'm not doing that right now. I think that the Reds came out of this all right. And guess what? Graham Ashcraft's on the mound today, baby. I cannot wait to watch Doug Day number 2 of the season. See him get going here against Milwaukee. The pitching is rounding into form. And they're keeping the Reds in every single game, and I love it. We saw an all too familiar sight on Sunday for Tejay Antone. So who is ready to step up? And is it someone who is about to return from injury? We'll get into that next. Game time is the best way to get to the ballpark. If you're looking for those last-minute ticket deals, Game Time is the best way to do it. They've got this amazing promo, too, as well. We normally talk about new users and all this other stuff, but all users, everybody who's got the app, that includes me, use the code FIRSTPITCH, and you'll get $20 off a minimum $150 purchase up until April 14th on the app right now. So I saved you some money off of the app that saves you money to get into the ballpark. That's Game Time. Do what I do. Go down to the banks, pop up on a nice spot there, get you a nice cold beverage, maybe something to eat before the game, and then find a last-minute ticket deal. It is the best way to get into the game because they've got those last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Game Time is how I get in. It's how Steve gets in. It's how a lot of our friends get in because we've told them about the app and they absolutely love it. Gives you the view from your seat so you know exactly what you're going to be looking at. And they've got all-in pricing so that you don't click on a price and then you find out there's a whole bunch of fees that double it. Some other apps like to do that. Game Time doesn't. Game Time wants you to feel like you know exactly what's going on before you get there. And they've got all digital tickets, which means it's right there on your phone. So go to Game Time today. Use that code FIRSTPITCH. All users use the code FIRSTPITCH and save $20 off a minimum $150 purchase. That's Game Time with the last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. Join the Locked On Reds Insiders today. I have a revamped program for you, and I want you to be an insider. For $4.99 a month, you will become the smarter Reds fan, and you'll get all the latest updates. You'll be that friend in your friend group that everybody asks about the Reds. Text Insider to 513-597-0944 and get a free 14-day trial to see if you like it. Again, text Insider to 513-597-0944 to get a free 14-day trial and see if you want to become a Locked On Reds Insider. All right. Definitely have to talk about this, and it's a bummer, man, because seeing what happened to Tejay Antone on Sunday, I didn't want to see it at all, for sure. I mean, you never want to see that for any player, but for it to happen so early in the season, Tejay Antone throws one pitch and immediately just looks super uncomfortable. David Bell comes out, Tomas Vera, the trainer, comes out, look at him, immediately takes him back into the clubhouse. We saw this happen with him last year. He threw more than one pitch, but after one at-bat, same thing. Then they reported, well, it was elbow discomfort. You know, if it weren't the end of the season, he might have missed a little bit of time and came back. This is such a bummer because Tejay Antone is one of those pitchers that we will constantly and forever say, man, when he was healthy, he was on. It's just he really wasn't very healthy. He's unfortunately, Tejay Antone pitched 23 games in a season in 2021 before getting hurt, getting Tommy John surgery, and then missed his second Tommy John surgery and missing all of 2022. And this injury, it's just a bummer, dude. And David Bell talked about this injury, what it means. Of course, he put his usual positive spin on it, but he did say the key acronym.
Obviously concerning and all that for any pitcher. We all know that TJ's been through some things. So for right now, we're just going to think positive, keep our fingers crossed that it turns out to be nothing. He's going to get a follow-up exam here today or tomorrow, MRI tomorrow. We'll know a lot more. But no matter what, TJ's he's going to get through this, and he's going to be fine. He's an incredible, in every way, incredible person, incredible teammate, and he's worked so hard to get to this point. And no matter what, he just has so much to offer, and he's going to be fine. He's going to get through this. But like I said, beyond that, we're just fingers crossed he's going to be back on the mound here real soon.
MRI today, Monday, depending on when you're listening to this, but he's getting an MRI on Monday. Should know more. Based on the way that the Reds have moved about this here recently, there's a chance that they won't make any announcement on Monday. And kind of looking at who's ready, I kind of think that Sam Moll is the closest to being ready. He actually pitched back-to-back days, Saturday and Sunday, for Louisville. So they may be giving him a day to kind of just make sure that everything is healthy, that he's ready to go. And they're going to probably give some time for the test results for Antone to come in and things like that before they make a move, make a decision. But I hate this for Antone. The fact that he made the opening day roster, it felt like a culmination of the Reds acknowledging the work that he's put in to rehab and get back healthy. And it felt like affirmation for him that you can still do this. Probably the most unfair part of baseball is when a guy finds out he can no longer baseball. And as a fan, I hate seeing that happen for anybody. That the final injury that's the straw that broke the camel's back, or some guy's on an 0 for 30 slump and he's 39 years old or whatever. It's just things like that. It brings me no joy. No joy. But with Sam Moll being close, he looks like the guy. Ian Gibaut did start his rehab in Dayton on Friday, and he pitched again on Sunday. I actually got the chance to talk to him about his rehab. I talked with him and Jeff Gilbert from Dayton Daily News. Both me and him got the chance to talk to him. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
I'll have to go to Louisville for a couple. Not really sure how many. Probably, I don't know, a handful, more than a couple probably. Probably like 4 or 5. Give me a back-to-back in there, and in a sense, it's the thought of like having like a spring, like try to get like a good few outings, like a number of outings under my belt to go compete at the big league level, and feel good, feel healthy, and feel ready to go. So just knock out a couple more of these rehab outings, and should be back up there.
He had a lot more to say, but then music started playing in the background, and YouTube's a little bit stringent about that, so I didn't want to go too crazy with it. But suffice it to say, he talked about like how the injury happened to him. He strained. He had a pronator strain in his right forearm and his throwing forearm, which I think pronator is like the inside of your wrist. And he kind of said like he was throwing BP at home. said he felt fine while throwing it. He woke up the next day. He was super sore, got it looked at. They said, yeah, it's kind of a strain, so he decided to shut it down. That's why he really didn't ever get going in spring training, is because he was just making sure it was healthy. And he reiterated multiple times he feels really good. And after the outing, the one inning that he had on Friday, the one inning that he had on Sunday for Dayton now goes off onto a road trip, and then Ian Gibaut is going to go down to Louisville. Presumably, like he said, a handful of outings. We might not see him until next week. So, the week of the 15th and all that stuff. But it was good to see him. And I mean, all of his pitches were working. High A hitters, don't know how much you really want to take that into account, but it was good to see that he was feeling pretty well after that rehab outing. But he's coming back healthy. Sam Moll's coming back healthy. Nick Lodolo, they've constantly told us, and there's been no change to this report, that he will be back either April 10th or April 11th, which is only like a couple days away. So there's going to be movement. This pitching staff, I mean, Tejay Antone, if he hits the IL, that's one, but there's two more guys that have to move. Steve and I are going to talk more about who is moving on tomorrow's Locked On Reds podcast. Make sure you join us for that. Thank you to our everydayers out there. You guys are what makes us go. If you're not an everydayer, become one by subscribing on your favorite podcasting platform and right here on YouTube. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you're going out for a drive or going out to do a workout or something like that, you're like, man, how do I keep up with this? Find us on your favorite app. We got a link down in the description of today's episode that has a link to all different kinds of apps that you can find the Locked On Reds podcast for, and you can listen and take us with you everywhere. Coming up, I already mentioned that. We're talking about how the pitching is moving. Thanks so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds podcast. You guys always know that we will be Locked On Reds every single day.